Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. We do projects, training, and consulting. Welcome to the Streambots bot. And sorry about the strange time for the shows this week. We had daylight savings time this past weekend, which is kicking my butt. So for some of you, this is the normal time, and for some of you, this is totally the wrong time. Please note our shows are almost always 6:30 p.m. Italy time, so always best to just check at deltacx.com/links. That's where we have a Google Calendar, and if you add that Google Calendar to your Google Calendar, you'll always know when the shows are in your time. So there you go. As always, I want to thank people who are giving to the show through the YouTube Join. That's $3 to $10 per month from lovely people supporting the show and keeping me in streaming software and chocolate chips. I turned the chocolate chips this weekend into the Headbangers Kitchen recipe for keto tiramisu. Which I also made decaf, and that was great. All right, so let's talk about today's show. It's a little bit think out loud, but it's a little bit of a special episode. I need a special sensitive theme song because we need to talk about names, addresses, dates, phone numbers, and all kinds of personal info that can be put into websites, apps, systems, forms, and other digital interfaces. I don't have a lot planned here. It's going to be a little bit of seat of pants, so I'm really curious to see what you think and what you're saying, especially about any websites you've seen that are doing this well or doing this really badly. So let me talk about the type of thing that I'm talking about. Have you ever tried to put your phone number into a website and it gave you an error message? I don't like the format of your phone number. Hey, Nadu. Sometimes it gives you a clue as to what format it should be, and sometimes you just don't even know and you have to start guessing. Does it want parentheses, dashes, spaces, no spaces? Remember that many of these things are things that UX designers should be able to have some control of. Hi, Manuel. We should be able to be working with our engineering partners and be able to say, hey, don't error people out if they give their phone number in a certain format. Just grab, I thought I closed all my Discord stuff. Just grab what you can and get that number in the database, and we can always save the number in the database however we need it. We don't have to mess with people and say, oh, well, you didn't give us the phone number the right way. If you live in a country where, for example, the phone number has 10 digits, like here in Italy, back in America, Canada, it's usually 334, that's 10 digits. Just look for 10 digits. Validate the field for 10 digits. Save the 10 digits into your system. It shouldn't matter if there are parentheses, dashes, dots, spaces, things like that. Don't make the user try to guess your format and put it in the right way. You are adding time, tasks, clicks, and especially people who might have accessibility needs will really struggle with that. So remember, one of our goals as designers, you can talk about delight all day long, you can talk about empathy all day long, but if you are giving people error messages because you don't like the format of their phone number, I don't think your empathy is what you think it is. So make sure that your company is doing the heavy lifting for these formats. When you are designing, make sure that you are working with engineering and say, accept this field pretty much however people put it and grab the phone number the way they want. When we see dates, we see some of the same things. I don't like the format of your date. Sometimes it's not clear, is it month first or day first when you're on different international websites. One of my least favorites, emojis up. Who has seen this one? You go to a website that relies you to pick a start date and an end date, maybe for like a hotel stay or something like that, and you put in your start date, let's say it's in the future, January 12th. And it still has the end date as like tomorrow, and then it gives you an error message. Your end date can't be before your start date. Well, hey, terrible system, how about when I say my trip starts on January 15, you default, or January 12, you default to an ending date that is that day or later. That way you're not giving me an error message for an error I didn't cause. As I'm talking about this, can you think of other examples of this type of thing where we deal with names, addresses, really any of this data input where we get these ridiculous errors and we make the user stop and try to figure this out? Something interesting happening on my... Here we go. Oh, okay. I'm going to send a quick note to Pier Mario. Hold on. We are playing with Samsung Galaxy Smart Tags, hashtag not sponsored. Okay, so it just spotted him. It's a little test to see how these things work. So can you think of other examples? I really don't. I got errored the other day. I put a start date for something because I have a lot of travel coming, and then the end date was like, your end date can't be. Well, I know that. I know how time works. I exist on a linear time plane. Help me out here. Let's also think about date formats, helping people not make mistakes around dates where the end date is before the start date. But a really huge problem that, Ian says systems removing the 0 from numbers by default, pet peeve. That's a perfect example, Ian. Thank you so much. I was just going to talk about names and addresses, and I think we could talk about names and addresses for the rest of the show. But let's start with what Ian said, which is, so I have a zip code that begins with 0. And a year or so ago, we ordered a package from another country, and everyone was getting their packages because it was a new CD release, and we didn't get ours. We didn't know what happened. So finally, we contacted the shipper, and they said, yeah, it came back to us. And I was like, who did you address it to? And their system had cut off the 0 at the beginning of our zip code, so they just saw the next 4 numbers, and the system... The Italian Postal Service kicked it back and acted like, we don't know what postal code that is. We can't find that place, which also seems like a problem we should be able to solve. If the name of my city is on there, or town, and the province and the country, don't you kind of know the postal code? There's only one postal code for where I am. Do you still need the postal code? So that's another area where the system could have solved the problem and said, okay. Like, let's use an example. So I grew up in a fairly awful town called Massapequa, New York, and the postal code is 11758. If someone forgot the first one, or it was hard to read, could you still find Massapequa, New York? Could you? And the address, which is the only address of its kind in Massapequa, New York. That reminds me, when I was in high school, I sent a letter to the other side of town. I lived in Massapequa. The other side of town was technically Massapequa Park, 11762. I didn't know whether my friend lived in Massapequa or Massapequa Park, but I was sending a letter basically across town. Paper letters, y'all. What year was that? And I actually got the letter back, and someone had handwritten on it. I think I'd written it to Massapequa 11758, 2 Park Avenue, Massapequa 11758, and I think I got it back, and it said something like, 2 Park Avenue isn't in Massapequa, it's in Massapequa Park. And I'm thinking, if you knew that, why didn't you just deliver it? Where's my fire? Fire! So seriously, these are examples of where our systems can take work and friction off of our users and customers by helping them never make mistakes and fixing things when there is a mistake. Elliot says, form fields that just say address are a pain. What if I live in an apartment? Do I enter my suite number before the street address? Yes, very true. Where does the apartment number go if there isn't a separate box that says apartment or suite number? I love when it says suite and you're like, I live in an apartment. Is that a suite? Well, what's your definition of a suite? So that's another good point. But let's go back. Manuel says, would this all be an example of building knowledge into design? I think so. Yes, I think absolutely, because we know something. We might have an address database and we know where Massapequa, New York is, or we know where postal code 11758 is in America. We know that. We don't have to make it someone else's fault if they've written the wrong thing. This is especially true when there is only one postal code that matches your town. There is, last I left, it was Massapequa, New York 11758, and there's no other postal code for that area. So certainly in a form, I would love to be able to type 11758 in the form and have it go, hey, that's Massapequa, New York. Now, that just saved me a lot of time, especially helpful for people with accessibility needs who might be tabbing through a form, who might be voice dictating through a form. And the more we can save people work, or, hey, Massapequa's not easy to spell. Who, without looking it up, who wants to take a crack at Massapequa? Hey, Charlene. Massapequa's not easy to spell. I might spell it wrong. I might have a typo. The more we can take this friction off the user and, as Manuel pointed out, build in that knowledge design. Now, if you're new to knowledge design and you're wondering, who's this Manuel guy and how did he know that? We've got at least one show about it on the channel. Just go to YouTube and write Delta CX Knowledge Design. And that one should come up and you can learn more about this technique totally for free. I'd love to see people attempting to spell Massapequa without Googling it. Not an easy one. And I lived there for all of my younger years and I had to constantly spell that address, constantly spell that town. But just in case I thought that was a difficult one, later in life, one of the, when I lived in Tucson, Arizona, who's coming to my wedding, I lived at an address where the street number was 5 numbers long. So I don't remember 1, 2, 7, 4. I don't remember. It had 5 numbers. And hi, Akshay. And then the name of the street was Placita Meseta de Oro. And if you speak Spanish, that probably made sense to you. If you speak another Romance language, that might have made some sense to you. But basically, it's Golden Plateau Place. And even people who spoke Spanish would say to me, Mesita? And I would say, no, meseta. It's not a small table, it's a plateau. And I had to spell that street name so many times. And very often I found that there wasn't enough room on form fields for a street named Placita Meseta de Oro, especially with a 5-number address at the front. It's not like I was house number 2. It was something like 1285. I don't know. I'd have to look up Google Maps what my old address was, but it was 5 numbers long. Now what do? What's the correct abbreviation? What will the post office recognize? What will the system accept? Sometimes these systems check addresses against what the post office database says. If I put in some weird abbreviation, will the system get it? I eventually had to go to the post office and say, how do I abbreviate this so that you recognize it? And they said, oh, instead of placita, we use pla. So just write Pla Meseta de Oro. Akshay says, I wish Uber did that. It takes ages for me to enter an address in India. If they just took a pin, the address discovery would be much faster. That's true. I use Lyft in America, and I can do the pin. The pin is definitely better. Let's see. What else? Just checking a couple of messages coming in. I'll check those later. Thanks to people sending me private messages. Nobody's taking a crack at Massapequa. All right. Is it that scary? Let's see what else. Oh yeah. So think about many people, especially around the world, live in places that have very long names. Especially once you get into places I've seen that are like street this, building this, apartment or unit this. And so many of our forms don't leave room for those very specific addresses. Charlene says it's India because the postcode's very wide. That's true. This is my suggestion earlier, only works for certain areas. It's not going to work in India. It may work in other places like where I am now, or parts of America. But even so, if you go to if I go to America, you can Google what are zip codes for Tucson, Arizona. You'll probably get 50, 80, 70 zip codes. So, but if you put in the zip code first, the system should know that's Tucson, Arizona. But the same might not be true for India. Charlene, Melanie wins. That is the correct spelling of Massapequa. Massapequa. Hey, it's Dragos in Romania. Hello. No, that's not your name. That's a place. Dragos Marian in Romania. And that's got a dash in it. Oh, yeah. So if you have a dash, things with so the street I live on here in Italy has an accented character on it, and I get lots of systems erroring me out because it doesn't like an A with an accent on it. So I have to write an A without an accent on it, and of course, luckily the Italians are smart enough to be able to figure out A with the accent and A with not the accent are close enough, but it's the whole world, everybody. If you are doing international signups, registrations, e-commerce, service delivery, and other things, I've got to be able to put in my street the way it's spelled, whether that's a dash or an accent. The saddest example recently, and I'm going to name and shame here, though I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this company correctly. I use Gusto, for my payroll service. Definitely not sponsored since I'm about to poop on them. And I was adding our super good friend Stephanie Walter to my payroll system to pay her for her concentric workshop because she deserves the money and I wanted to get it to her and do it correctly. And they had a way for me to add an international contractor. Now, what's a little clue there? International. They might not only use the 26 unaccented American characters, they might have other characters. And of course, Stephanie spells her name with an E with an accent, and as she should. And I copy pasted it into Gusto and it errored me out. And it said, I can't put in an international character. And I was like, that's this person's name. That's this person's name. I want to use her name. Charlene says, is that also the food company like HelloFresh? No, it sounds like it's a food company because it's Gusto or Gusto, which is flavor in some languages, but it is a payroll service. So if you ever work for me and I'm paying you, you're going to put your butt into Gusto, so that I can do my proper corporate paperwork on who's been paid what. And if you're in America, you'll get some American tax forms. And if you're not in America, you won't get American tax form. So it's kind of a payroll tax form system. It's got nothing to do with food ordering. And it wouldn't even accept the accented E in Stephanie's name in an international contractor section of the site. Everybody, when you are working on your CX and UX designs, you must be thinking of this. That's why this show is here today. You must be thinking of this. You must make sure that you are telling this to your cross-functional team. Tell the product manager, tell the product owner, tell the engineers, tell QA. We have to make sure that this works for whatever range of languages you've decided it has to work for. Does it have to work for all Latin-based languages, including accented letters and letters with other, is it called diacritics? I forget what it's called, like the tilde on the N, the cedilla. We've got to be able to at least accept that in an English-speaking system. And if you're trying to be more international, then it's got to accept other languages' characters as well. So erroring people makes no sense. But we also have to now talk about just names. Let's focus for a moment on names. Names are very personal. I've got mine. You've got yours. Now, I've got a legal name, and that's not the name any of you call me. I've got a legal name that's on my driver's license, that's on my passport, but that doesn't match the name that you call me. It doesn't say Debbie Levitt on these documents. That's not my legal name or my birth name. It's not what's on my birth certificate. Now, here's where we get into more funky trouble. when we insist on, now there are times where we do need to get the name that is on somebody's legal documents because we need to match up those legal documents for some sort of verification purpose. So if you're opening a bank account, they usually need to see a passport or a driver's license or a government ID. I get it. But remember, there are also names that people want to be called that are not on their legal documents for whatever reason. My name isn't legally Debbie, it's Deborah. And I have a middle name, but not every country uses middle names. What do I do in Italy when I am asked to fill out forms using my name exactly as it appears on my passport, which means it has a middle name, and there is no box for a middle name because Italy doesn't do middle names? Now, I've had to put in my first and middle name as my first name, so everywhere I go, people think that's my name. They think they have to call me Deborah Gale. For better or for worse, y'all, I didn't pick it. I just showed up and someone threw that at me. So everywhere I go, and these are not easy names for Italians to pronounce or spell. Deborah is not bad. It's in they have it in Italian without the H on the end, but Gale, no, Italians are not happy with that. They're also not happy with Levitt, but that's another story. There really isn't a good way for me to fill out those forms based on what my name is. Now, expand that out. What about people from other cultures who have different ways of using their last name or surname or family name? Some people have no last name, no surname, no family name. Do we error those people out? How many people know somebody whose last name or surname or family name is 1 or 2 letters? I have seen this before. I had a client who had a 2-letter last name, and sometimes they would get errored out by systems because somebody assumed that no family surname could possibly be shorter than 3 letters. Like, where's the rest of your letters? Depending upon where you're from or where you live, that might be it. That might be it. It might be 1 letter. It might be 2 letters. It might be 0 letters. So why are our systems erroring this out? If somebody has a no family name, no surname, that should be taken into consideration. If we are doing our research and understanding our customers, then we understand what names might they have. How long are their addresses? What countries might their phone numbers be from? What do these phone numbers look like? So we have to make sure as designers that we are documenting this stuff and working especially with engineering, because they're going to be the one who write the rules into the system, that maybe there are no characters in the last name. I remember everybody losing their minds when Prince, who was alive and remembers when Prince renamed himself a squiggle. Excuse me. And all the music magazines and places got sent a special font that had the Prince symbol in it. Maybe some people's names include symbols. That's their name. Yeah, Charlene says music. Music for sure. We are not being diverse, equal, inclusive when we are superimposing our own culture's name rules on somebody else. Yeah, the artist formerly known. Akshay says, should there be a first name and last name field or a single name field? You said many people don't have surnames. What is the best UX practice? Well, we could separate the fields, but we don't have to make them mandatory. We could say last name, optional, leave blank if you have no surname. and have the system allow that. People often like to see first and last names separate so that they know how to address people. So for example, if I just put Debbie Levitt in there, the system has to try to figure out which is the first name and which is the last name. If it says Debbie Gail Levitt, then what's my first name and what's my last name? Is my last name Gail Levitt as some sort of, you know, some people have like their mother's name and then their father's name as their last name. In many Spanish-speaking countries, that's common. Or do I have a double first name that just doesn't have a dash in it? So the problem is if we don't give people separate fields, we often don't know how to address them if we have a system who's going to address them later. So if we want to call them Dr. So-and-so or Ms. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. Yeah, what's your opinion on salutations? Yay or nay? I find them awkward only because there are so many of them. Sometimes you see these lists of salutations and it's like Padre, Lieutenant, Doctor. In Italy here we have female doctor because words are gendered. I think it really depends on the mood and your company's kind of brand voice. Is your company's brand voice, hi Debbie, or is your company's brand voice, hello Ms. Levitt? When I see Mrs. Levitt, I feel a little crabby for about 5 seconds because I'm not Mrs. Levitt. I didn't marry Mr. Levitt. It's easier in Italy where women don't take their husband's last names, traditionally speaking. So if I'm Levitt, people already know that's my maiden name. And I'm just Signora Levitt because I'm an adult woman and all adult women get Signora. And so that's a little bit easier. At least in that sense, that language has simplified that, and they don't have to worry about Mrs. versus Ms. and things like that. Yeah, Ian says gendering is really problematic for sure, especially in the Romance and other languages where words are gendered. Charlene, does it also depend on CRM captures? Right. If we are putting people into a database so that we can contact them later, especially when your salesmen are calling, you always know it's funky when someone calls and says, hi, can I speak to Miss Debbie? And I'm thinking like, do you think that's my first name or my last name? You know, or is this just something else? So I can see giving people separate fields for these names, but we have to remember that sometimes people have multiple names. Sometimes people have, like we have a friend of the show who's sleeping right now but came up with the idea for this show, so thanks to Chee Huat. Chee Huat to me looks like 2 words, but that's Chee Huat's first name. We wouldn't call that person Chee, and we wouldn't call them Huat, and we wouldn't call them by their last name. So how do we make sure we are understanding of other people's cultures and naming? I think that's really important. And then we also get into, and also I was going to say, like, if we think about some cultures, after certain religious festivals or rites of passage, people take on additional names. Sometimes people become Debbie, Gail, Mary, Catherine, Levitt. If that is now their legal name and you have a form where they have to fill out their legal name, maybe I'm now Debbie, Gail, Mary, Catherine. Does that fit on your form? Or did you say my first name can only be 10 letters? We know many people have very long first names and last names, and these are beautiful names that we need to respect. Make sure, UX designers out there, that you are thinking about all of these things. Again, I don't want to hear about your empathy if there is a friend of the show who cannot type their name into your fields. I don't care about your empathy. Your empathy has fallen flat with me. We have to make sure that when we are collecting personal information, that we are taking other cultures and languages into account. Akshay says, is there a resource which captures these cultural nuances? Not that I know of. If anyone finds one, let's share it in our Slack or Discord. And by the way, you can join our Slack and Discord totally free. There is no membership. You can just join. And it's found here at deltacx.com/links. Come on and join. Our Discord seems to attract more introverts, so our Slack is a little more active, but I'm hoping people will drop by the Discord and mix it up a little. What do you say? Now, we also need to talk, when we talk about names, we need to talk about a few other things related to names. Now, I've already talked about how my legal name might be Deborah or Deborah Gale, but what about the idea that I want to be called Debbie? Are we capturing people's preferred names? And this is especially important where someone may be going through a transgender process, where maybe they're in the process of changing their identity and their legal documents might say one identity and their life is another identity. And we need to make sure that we are taking that into consideration and that we are respectful of that. My name might be Deborah Gale Levitt on my documents, but I might have another name that I am using. And we need to collect that, and we need to make sure that that is the name that we call people. Does anybody remember when Facebook got into trouble 6 years ago, when they decided to create a real names policy, and then they said that everybody's name was going to have to match their legal ID? And a lot of people from the LGBTQIA plus community were like, that's not my name if you ask me, so no, I don't want that. This is the name that everybody knows me by. This is the name I want to use. And Facebook tried to crack down on people. They were closing your account if you didn't change your name to your ID. To me, I just assumed it was some sort of unethical grab for Facebook to get everybody's IDs. But it was... Damn bugs. Bugs. Don't like bugs. It was definitely not diverse, definitely not equal, definitely not inclusive, and definitely didn't think ahead. And I think OkCupid was going to try that at one point too, that you're going to have to use your legal name, and there was a huge backlash. So we have to consider that there may be a difference between what someone's legal ID still says, for better or worse, and the name they want to be called by. So make sure you are capturing that and that you are honoring and respecting that. Because guess what? I don't want to hear about your empathy. If you are calling transgender people by the wrong name, and that goes for, everybody say it with me, genders. Why do we still have forms asking people's genders? Who cares? What is this that you need to know anybody's gender identity? What does it matter? What does it matter if they are male or female or non-binary or any of the other genders? Because there's a list of them. You can grab that list. You can put it in your form. At least if you're going to ask for gender, give people a list and let them fill out one if they don't see the one that they use. Stop trying to dump everybody into male or male, female, other. Talk about othering people and making them feel not included and on the outside. Stop it with other. Yeah, analytics. And really, it's very often for marketing. Hey everybody, Debbie's a woman, so let's show her ads with women going through problems where she can be like, ooh, me too. Hey everybody, this person's a man. We'll show them manly ads with men and things men need. These are lazy buckets. I generally don't tend to like things that stereotypically American women like. I don't want flowers. I don't want pink things. I don't want hearts and plush toys. I like motorcycles. I like archaeology. I like music theory. I hate wearing makeup. I hate dressing up. I hate I've got vanity, but just a little. As you can tell from how I show up to the show today, I put in no effort. I'm wearing the dirtiest stained hoodie I have. It's completely torn up. And look, who cares? Not me. So when you are giving me ads for $1,000 sunglasses because you think I am a woman who cares about this stuff, lazy buckets. A lot of this gender stuff is for marketing to put you in a lazy bucket. Oh, men like this, women like this. Well, if marketing ever catches up to how many genders and identities there are, that whole thing falls apart. You can't say all non-binary people want this. All two-spirit people want this. Your lazy buckets fall apart. I don't like their lazy buckets based on age. You wouldn't believe the ads that I'm getting now that I turned 50 and hit menopause. Oh my God, you would think I turned 80. The ads that I'm getting, again, they seem to imply that I must be near death. I mean, it's truly strange. Not a positive experience. Milky Drops, how you doing? I work in healthcare, and the app we're building feeds into the hospital's EHR, which I assume to mean electronic health records. We add a disclaimer explaining why we need the info. Right. And sometimes when I do screener surveys for research, I ask people for gender. But two things. Number one, I'm letting them write in their own. Number two, I'm telling them that we are not judging people by gender. We're not excluding people necessarily by gender. We're just hoping to get a mix of people so that we don't end up talking to 30 guys. So I'm asking gender on some of my surveys for that purpose, but I'm explaining that I'm not judging anyone's gender, and I'm we just want to make sure we get a mix of people. So especially when I see somebody come into my screener survey who's not male and not female, I definitely want to try to talk to them to make sure I'm getting additional perspectives. So that's true. Hospital health records are going to have to match my legal documents, whether or not they say the name that I prefer or the gender that I am, or things like that. So we have to be more mindful of the sense of identity and how people view themselves. You know, we talk so much, everybody say it with me, we talk so much about empathy. And we talk about how empathy is about walking in people's shoes and seeing their world through their eyes. Most of our empathy is bullshit, but if you're going to attempt to have any empathy and see someone else's world through their eyes, imagine how hard it is for them to deal with health records, to deal with voting records, car records, and all kinds of things. Melanie's adding to something onto Slack. Naming Practice Guide UK 2006. Melanie, I don't have time to look at that right now. Can you tell us more about what that is if you're still here in the stream? I know you can't paste a link into YouTube, but maybe tell us what you found on that and people can Google for Naming Practice Guide UK 2006. It seems to be a PDF. What does it say? But remember, I'm not just talking about this to yap about this. I'm telling all of you who work in CX or UX design, service design, and to some extent research to make sure that you are taking all of these things into consideration when you are doing your work. I typically might ask someone in an interview if there is a... what is this on my screen? That's very strange looking. I might ask them if they have preferred pronouns. And so I asked that for a while, and then I stopped asking that because I decided in all of my reports and stuff I was just going to anonymize everybody and just call everybody a gender-neutral they. But for a while, I was asking people their pronouns, and then I was saying she or he or they or whatever they asked me for. But now I've stopped asking people that, and I just use they for everybody. Sorry, weird random things coming in. I'm expecting some updates from my boyfriend. that didn't come in. Melanie says, it's a very extensive guide to names and naming conventions around the globe, broken out by continent and country. Hey, thanks. That sounds great. Yeah, for the person who asked, is there, I guess it was Akshay maybe. That sounds like a great place to start. It's a 2006 document, so maybe there's a newer one, or maybe it's still a great place to start. But remember, you can also learn these things through research, not evaluative research, generative research. Learn more from your audiences. Learn how they see themselves. Learn the names they want to use for themselves. Learn how they identify with their gender and things like that. It's old and I haven't verified it. It's a starting point. Yeah. So let's make sure that we are taking these things into account, because if you claim to have empathy, then see the world through somebody else's eyes and recognize the hardships that they go through when they don't match what things on their legal documents say. We can't even imagine. If it's not happening to you, you probably can't even imagine, which means you don't have empathy. That's okay. You're not going to have empathy. Hopefully you have sympathy and you care and you're going to do something about it. Today's show is a call to action to make sure that when you are working on paper forms, online forms, questionnaires and surveys, make sure that you are thinking about length of names, length and formatting of names and addresses, validating fields, and when do we give people an error message, and when is their information good enough? If my telephone number needs to have 10 numbers and I give you 9, okay, I might need an error message that I'm missing a number, but don't error me because you don't like where I put dashes. Come on, we got to be past that. We have smart, intelligent systems. We have computers that can paint you a picture. Would you please just keep my phone number however the heck you want it and don't make it my problem? Has anybody ever tried to fill out a job application through the Workday system? They are the worst at this. I'm hoping they've cleaned this up by the time somebody is watching this video in the future, but holy cats, I feel like Workday is the worst at erroring me out in fields for reasons I will never know because their error messages aren't helpful. But remember, great UX is not about better error messages. It's about keeping people from making that mistake in the first place. That's where Larry Marine talks about error prone. We want to make sure that where something has the possibility for error, that we've designed the system to keep them from getting that error, to keep them from making a mistake, or to keep them from thinking they've made a mistake. All right, I've been talking for 45 minutes straight. Who else has anything they want to bring up about names, addresses, phone numbers, dates? What else did we miss? Birth dates, all of these things. Let me go back to, we had a Slack conversation about this, and I originally thought I was going to show some of the screens, and then I decided not to show the screens. Let me see. We can take a look at those comments in Slack. Now I can't find it, of course. Yeah, now I can't find it. I'm on my phone. So there are other name issues that I missed, especially I remember one of the ones that came up in Slack was that some countries put the family name first and the personal or given name second. So you might see my name shown as Levitt Debbie. That's even done here sometimes in Italy. I've seen my boyfriend's name pop up on a lot of stuff with his surname or family name first and his what we would call first name second. Certainly in a lot of Asian countries as well. Now, if people are used to writing their name that way and they think that what we think of as the surname is first, then just writing a field for first name may or may not be what you're looking for. But ultimately, the other question is, in what order does this person expect to see their name? I expect to see Debbie Levitt, but somebody from another culture or country might expect to see Levitt Debbie on everything. And even if they see Levitt Debbie, they might expect to be called Debbie. They might expect to be called Levitt. I don't know. Every country or culture is going to be different. This is why we have to research with people and understand what this has to look like to them. What makes sense to them? A lot of that is information architecture, and it becomes our interaction design, but it really starts as research. What do we understand about this region or language or country or people or culture so that we can use people's names the way they intend? Very often names come up here in the live chat, and I'm not sure which name I'm supposed to call people by. If something says Infinity, okay, that's a familiar looking name to me, but maybe Finnerty is the given name and Ian is the last name. I'm never too sure what I should call people based on what different cultures are. So remember, you don't want to guess. You don't want to lump everybody into what your culture is or your company headquarters where their culture is. The best user experiences cater to individuals and their cultures and their needs and the way that they see themselves. That's why we keep talking about mental models. What is this person's perception of their own world? How do they categorize and understand things? If we don't know, or we're guessing, or we don't care, then don't be surprised when we get unhappy emails or complaints or tweets or mastodons or whatever it's going to be, because we're not getting it right. I remember I learned this word in 10th or 11th grade social studies, ethnocentric. We're putting our culture at the center and treating everybody else like their culture really doesn't matter. You're just going to have to conform to our stuff. And I get it. I have to do that here for Italy, and there's a lot of stuff I have to put on forms that doesn't make sense. The main thing, and in fact, in America, a lot of forms will say maiden name. That's going to be weird for an Italian, for example, because your maiden name, if you're a woman, your maiden name probably is still your name. Many women here do not take their husband's last names. It's very uncommon. But in America, it's so common for a woman to take her spouse's last name, very often a husband, that forms will say, what's your name and what is your maiden name or your previous name? So many ridiculous questions that we haven't even stopped and thought about. This is really about critical thinking. We've had these forms for so long. They were paper forms. They were paper forms decades ago, and then we just computerized them, and nobody stopped and thought about how shitty some of these forms are. But that's our job. Our job is to say, sure, we can put a form in the system and we can make people fill it out and we can make sure people can tab through it and dictate into it. Great. Does the form make sense? Is it a good form? Is it easy to use? Is it intuitive? Does it have the space for whatever length my name is, my wacky address with this town I live in now? I haven't counted it, but I swear it's like 30 letters long. I think that where I live now has to be 20 or 30. It seems like the longest town name I've ever had. I think it's 9 syllables to say it. It's so long. Is there room for that? No. Very often I'm given a paper form with boxes, and I run out of boxes. Okay, that's paper. That's old school. But how about when I get online? Not only does my town... Festus says, I've had forms asking, what is my parents' profession? Who cares? Why are you asking me? Yeah, so not only is the place where I live, not only is it 8 million letters, but it is 4 separate words, and one of them, there's an apostrophe in there. So technically, it's 2 words with an apostrophe, a third word, and I guess a second word. First word has an apostrophe, and then a last word. I get errored out on the apostrophe. Sometimes I get errored out, why does your address have so many spaces? Why is your address so long? Why? Why? We've got to be better than this. We have to be better than this. And it's your job to be better than this. It's your job to remind people where you work that not everybody lives at 123 Main Street, New York, New York. Or Massapequa, New York. Massapequa is an ugly, awful place, people. I don't recommend it. Please don't go. The only thing good about it is All-American Burgers. Boy, do I love those burgers. Not sponsored. I love All-American Burgers. It's the only thing I miss about the entire state of New York. Yep, that's right. It's your job. Don't wait for somebody else. Don't wait for it to be in the requirements documents. Don't wait for a product manager to say something. Don't wait for the engineering lead to bring it up. You say something. You bring it up. You talk to your team about cultures and names and spellings and identities and how our technology is going to facilitate that and make people feel understood and included, and to watch for anything in our technology that might make people or could possibly make people feel disrespected, misunderstood, not included, othered, on the outside. You get where I'm going there. That might be the show. This was obviously riffed based on a really cool idea Chee Huat had. So any other thoughts or questions on what we, especially as designers, can do to notice these problems early? Bring them up as risks. We run the risk that we might not get as many signups as we'd like if people can't fit their name in the box. Should bring it up as a risk. Document it. Talk about it. Other thoughts? Anybody find Placita Meseta de Oro on the Google Maps? That was a very pretty little rental house. Well, while everybody thinks of their last questions and comments, we have an unbelievable packed week for you. Though remember, watch the times, because some of you change clocks this coming weekend, and then we're going to end up on... Oh, thanks, Javier. Thank you for subscribing. Hey, everybody, don't forget to subscribe. We have over 6,000 subscribers now, and I would love to see more of you subscribing and spreading the word. Remember, time zones, everybody. Our shows are 6:30 p.m. Italy, and if you didn't change clocks with me this past weekend, we're going to be off, possibly for the next week, possibly until March. So watch carefully. Tomorrow we have a special show. We're skipping office hours for a week, and we have a fun Halloween themed show tomorrow with Stephanie, accent on the E. We are going to be telling wacky stories of unethical people. So it's the Unethical and Wacky Stories show, and we want to get your stories too. So we're going to be using the usual office hours Ask Me Anything question system, but not for you to ask your questions, for you to share anonymously your wacky and unethical stories. So if you'd like to send some in for tomorrow's show, don't name names, don't name companies, but send it. Go to deltacx.com/links and pretend you're sending it in for the office hours, and we're going to read those stories and share our own tomorrow. So it is the spooky stories of wacky people. Wednesday is another special show upon request. So today's show was a request. We're doing a lot more shows by request, and I got multiple requests from many of you in Slack who asked me to please talk about how I personally do time management. It's going to be personal. I'm going to open up my calendar. It might say embarrassing things on there, and I don't care, because I want to see if I can help people with their time management by showing you how I manage my time. A lot of people ask me, how do I juggle working and writing and life and the show and answering people's questions online? And I would say I'm pretty precise about time management. I'll show you how I do it. You may or may not want to do something similar, but we'll be talking about that. Then I'm super excited for Thursday, and I have something fun to share with everybody there. We have our monthly networking hangout, but we're not going to be in Airmeet. We're going to try a new place called Remo, REMO.co. And the link is in the calendar, so you'll see it in Slack and Discord in the live events channel. It's just kind of like Darren's Chit Chat Hour. We just get together. Sometimes we talk UX, sometimes we talk about other things, but we're trying a new system, and we really hope people will come and join in. It is totally free, so come and hang out with us. I'm also hoping by Thursday that my book will be available for Amazon Kindle pre-order, so that could be something fun. And then, of course, Friday is Critical Thinking Stream. I already have two things. If you want to send something in for the Critical Thinking Stream, that too is at deltacx.com/links. And won't you please find 3 people you know who are interested in CX and UX and may be new to it, maybe work in it a while, maybe managers and leaders, and let them know about the channel, because we are all about the quality here and about teaching. So I don't see any other questions or comments coming in, so we will wrap up the show. But remember, tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Italy time, for whatever that is for you, and we'll have Steph, and we will just be telling spooky stories. Thanks to everybody for today. Great idea from Chee Huat, and thanks to everybody for chipping in with some of their own comments and suggestions. Thanks to Melanie for finding the guide. So have a super day, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are